Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or The Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be going in depth into my week number 11 tight end start or sit decisions. Inside today's video, I'll be going in depth into every single matchup from Thursday Night Football all the way until Monday Night Football, and I'll be telling you guys whether I believe you should start or sit the tight ends in all of those games. But before we could get into things, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure you do leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFNTSY. If you have any questions about week number 11, please ask down below in the comment section or in the Discord linked in the pinned comment in the video description. We'll be talking about our sponsor, DraftKings Sportsbook, a little bit later. So without further ado, let's get into our week number 11 tight end start or sit decisions. We begin with Thursday Night Football. The LA Titans, the Tennessee Titans at the Green Bay Packers. In this matchup, I am willing to start Robert Tonyan, but he is one of those bottom of the barrel starts. We've seen some pretty solid games this season out of Tonyan, and we've also seen the exact opposite where he doesn't really play good at all, including last week up against the Dallas Cowboys. Ultimately, there is a lot of upside for Tonyan in this offense because the wide receiver core isn't the best. The Titans defense is banged up, so I do think Robert Tonyan has the upside to be really good in this game, but ultimately, based upon the resume we've seen on this season, I just don't think he's the most trustworthy tight end, and that's why I say he's a bottom of the barrel start on the week. Austin Hooper has not been good at all this season. The Packers defense is pretty decent, and with the usage of Austin Hooper being very low, I don't think you should want to consider starting him in this spot up against the Packers. Next up, we move to the Sunday slate, the Chicago Bears at the Atlanta Falcons. Cole Kmet is on an absolute tear at the tight end position. I know he ended up getting banged up in last week's game, but based upon everything that I read, he should be good to go up against a putrid, up against a garbage Atlanta Falcons defense this week. I love Cole Kmet to potentially finish inside of the top 3 at the tight end position, and it wouldn't surprise me at all with how good Justin Fields has looked and how good Cole Kmet has been playing if he finished as the number 1 tight end on the week. Kyle Pitts is a guy that I'm playing every single week in fantasy. I know he has been a roller coaster ride of sadness all season. We've seen a couple of times where it's like, oh shit, that's why the Falcons drafted Kyle Pitts, because this guy's a freak of nature. He starts getting more targets. The issue is that Marcus Mariota half the time throws the ball to Manti Te'o's girlfriend who doesn't exist, and it's nowhere near Kyle Pitts. Hopefully this game up against a bad Bears secondary is a W for Mr. Kyle Pitts, but ultimately you can't feel super confident in him. Next up, we move to the Carolina Panthers at the Baltimore Ravens. Mark Andrews is going to be a start for me at this point as I'm recording today's video. I do feel pretty confident in saying that Mark Andrews is going to play. Now, this is a situation that you need to monitor all the way up until Sunday, and if he doesn't end up playing, then I think Isaiah Likely is a perfect fill-in in this spot. Honestly, with how good Isaiah Likely has looked, he may have even earned a role on the offense when Mark Andrews is playing. They might go out there and run some 2 tight end sets. Now, I'm not saying that's guaranteed to happen, so unless Mark Andrews doesn't play, I'm not playing Isaiah Likely, but I think if you have the room to hold him on your bench, you should hold Isaiah Likely, because if Andrews is healthy and they start running out 2 tight end packages, then Isaiah Likely could be dominant even with Andrews in the game. My guy Tommy, make that ass tremble for the Carolina Panthers, is a sit. Baker Mayfield will be the starting quarterback for the team on the week. Next up, we got the Browns at the Buffalo Bills, and the weather in this game sounds frightening. They're talking about 2+ feet of snow. I've read some reports where they say there's going to be 7 feet of snow. Now, obviously, we're going to have to wait up until Sunday to see. On Sunday morning, on my live stream at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, I'll be talking about what it looks like in Buffalo. There's going to be people on Twitter reporting what it looks like. It might be nothing. There might not be any snow, or maybe it snows before the game. You know, they have these cool things called shovels. They shovel the shit out of the way, and then bada bing, bada boom, we're fine. Or there's also a scenario where it snows, they shovel it, they plow it, and then it keeps snowing, and it keeps snowing, and it keeps snowing, and we get one of those games where it looks awesome. You can just envision the Christmas music playing as they're running the ball, and they're doing snow angels and shit, but the passing attack does not work. So we will wait until Sunday. If it is not super windy, super snowy, then you can play Dawson Knox and David Njoku. But right now, things are not looking too good. Next up, we got the Commanders at the Houston Texans. I will keep this one short. Jordan Atkins is going to be a sit for me. They use a couple of tight ends in Houston, and Davis Mills has not taken that next step in his second year in the NFL. He actually looked pretty decent last year. I thought he was pretty underrated, but this year he's basically just been the same, if not slightly worse. Logan Thomas is an incredibly talented player, and if there was ever a game for him to break out, it would be this game up against the Houston Texans, but ultimately, I just do not trust him. Next up, we got the Eagles at the Indianapolis Colts. Sadly, we have lost one of the must-start tight ends. Dallas Goedert was a guy that every single week you saw the upside in. He played fantastic up against the Commanders in that loss prior to his injury. They didn't even call a fucking penalty on his injury where he got his head basically ripped off of him. He was leaving the stadium looking like the headless horseman. It was embarrassing, the officiating at points in that game. But I'm not an Eagles fan, so it is what it is. But obviously, that was clearly a penalty. Dallas Goedert being injured sucks absolute ass. He was so reliable game in and game out. And even when he didn't have those big games, he was still a guy you want in your lineup. Jack Stoll is the quote-unquote replacement for him. Don't start him. Kyle Granson, Mo Alley Cox. They have a lot of tight ends in Indianapolis. I don't want anything to do with them. Next up, we got the New York Jumbo Jets at the New England Deflatriots. I expect this game to be incredibly low scoring, a very run-heavy game for both sides of the ball. Hunter Henry was really good with Bailey Zappaneta back under center, but now obviously Mac Jones, Mystic Mac, is back. Thus, I don't really want to start Hunter Henry, even if I do think this would be a great matchup for Hunter Henry on paper against the Jets defense, because they're not the best against the tight end, but ultimately, the fact that Mac Jones just doesn't throw the ball to him really does concern me. Tyler Conklin is start-worthy. We have seen games out of Conklin this year where this guy literally looks like one of the best tight ends in the NFL. He's getting force-fed the rock. He's scoring touchdowns upon touchdowns. He's looking fantastic. And then there's other games where he's down in the dumps, not getting the ball as much. It's been pretty up and down for him, but with how bad the tight end position has been all year long, he is definitely a guy that I'm willing to start. Not an upper echelon start, one of the bottom of the barrel guys. Next up, we got the LA Rams at the New Orleans Saints. In this matchup, I like all of the tight ends in this game, but if I'm being honest with you guys, when it comes to Tyler Higbee, the reason why I will talk myself into him this week is because Cooper Kupp is hurt. I'm assuming Matthew Stafford is going to play. If John Walford plays, then I'm kicking Tyler Higbee the fuck off my team. I don't even feel confident in saying this. But without Cooper Kupp, they have to throw the ball to someone. Allen Robinson has been inept all season. They have been Skoranek. They have Tyler Higbee. I think Stafford's going to look to start feeding the ball back to Tyler Higbee like he did early on in the season. Recently, Tyler Higbee has been virtually invisible. You can't see him John Cena style. He hasn't done jack shit through the last couple of games. But if there was ever a reason for his value to get pumped up, it would be because Cooper Kupp was hurt. Now, I'm not super confident in saying this, but I do think he is start-worthy. Juwan Johnson has just been on a roll over the last couple of weeks. Taysom Hill's usage has dropped. Juwan Johnson has looked really good with Andy Dalton under center. The team rolling with Andy Dalton again, despite the fact that Andy Dalton makes me want to. I would rather just walk on a mile-long thing of those hot coals that they used to walk on those TV shows than fucking have to deal with watching Andy Dalton anymore. Ultimately, I will be fine starting Juwan Johnson because of Andy Dalton, but from a viewer perspective, from my hopes of Chris Olave really smashing that upside, I would definitely prefer if Jameis Winston was under center. Taysom Hill, he's just very risky. High risk, high reward. You play him, you understand that he might literally score 0 points, but he could also score 30-plus points. So that's just kind of how I read things with him. Before we move on in to the rest of the games here at the tight end position, I would like to give you guys a quick word for our friends and our sponsor over at DraftKings Sportsbook. They've been on your screen this whole entire time. If you bet $5 on any sport pregame money line, you receive $200 in free bets if your bet wins on DraftKings. So in my opinion, since your bet has to win, I think you should go ahead and hop off of, instead of doing NFL, it might be your favorite sport. Since you're watching this video, obviously you like fantasy fantasy football, you like the NFL, I would suggest going to college football because there are much bigger favorites in college football. We just saw the Eagles on Monday Night Football, a team that I imagine all of America, except for some Commanders fans, who probably thought that the Eagles were going to trounce the Washington Commanders. Obviously, the Commanders win. So we're going to look at college football, where there are bigger favorites. It's on your screen right now. We're going to navigate to the college football tab on DraftKings. Scroll on down a little bit till we see Ohio State at Maryland. Ohio State currently set at minus 6,000 as I'm recording today's video. I like Ohio State at Maryland on the money line. Bet $5 on that. Receive $200 in free bets if that team wins. And if you don't want to do that, you could just scroll down a little bit more and go to Florida State versus Louisiana Lafayette, minus 2,400 on the money line. Bet $5 on that. Win $200 in free bets if that bet wins. So go ahead and make sure you guys do check that out. Link down below in the video description. Again, you do have to be a new user on DraftKings Sportsbook to use this offer. Back on into things. Next up, we move to the Detroit Lions at the New York Football Giants. In this spot, I'm going to keep this incredibly short. Brock Wright, as well as a couple of other tight ends, do play for the Detroit Lions to try to fill that gap that TJ Hawkinson left is the correct word. I was going to say leaved, but problem is they use multiple and they've actually been pretty solid, but when there's too many tight ends and they have Amon-Ra, they have Swift, they have Jamal Williams, it's basically impossible to say that you want to start any of these tight ends. Tanner Hudson, same thing with him. They use a couple of tight ends in New York with the Giants. They don't have a lot of weapons, so Hudson might get more involved as the season goes along, but right now he's a sit for me. Next up, we got the Las Vegas Raiders at the Denver Broncos. For me, I'm going to be firing up both of these tight ends. I know Greg Dulcich shit the bed in a big way last week. I banged the drum aggressively for him. I was probably Greg Dulcich's biggest fan aside from his mother last week, right? I was so in love with the upside, and this guy was on a 3-game hot streak of putting up over 10 half PPR points. Everything was looking so perfect, but yet Greg Dulcich didn't get enough targets. Russell Wilson missed him on a deep strike. It sucked. But at the end of the day, one down game isn't going to scare me, especially when he's going up against the putrid Las Vegas Raiders defense. Foster Moreau without Darren Waller. I did have some doubts about him last week, but he paid off. And the fact is that they're missing also Hunter Renfrow as well as Darren Waller, and they have to throw the ball to someone. So Foster Moreau is going to get targets. The defense does concern me, though. The Broncos defense is amazing. Next up, we move to the Dallas Cowboys going up against the Minnesota Vikings in Minnesota. Dalton Schultz was a guy that I also talked up pretty heavily last week, talking about coming out of the bye, that this is going to be a team that is going to look to utilize Dalton Schultz more. He's gotten more healthy with Dak Prescott back. Things are looking good. And now he gets the Minnesota Vikings. I think this is an incredibly positive spot for Dalton Schultz here. I think he's going to have another solid game. TJ Hawkinson has been on a roll ever since he was traded to the Detroit Lions, looking like a steal of a trade for the Minnesota Vikings, with especially how good this Vikings offense has looked as a whole, transitioning into more of a pass-heavy attack this year when compared to a more run-heavy approach over the last couple of years when they changed their coach. I like TJ Hawkinson here this week yet again. Him as well as Schultz are going to be must-start tight ends every single week. Next up, we move to the Cincinnati Bengals at the Pittsburgh Steelers. I do actually worry about the fact that this game might be low scoring, but both of these guys are pretty heavily used inside of their offense, especially Pat Freiermuth, who could be a target hog in any given game. The Bengals defense has been pretty hit or miss. We've seen games where the Bengals defense really shows up, and then other games like up against the Cleveland Browns where they get the dog shit beat out of them. They got teabagged by the Cleveland Browns before their bye week. This week, hopefully they come out, look a little bit better. I think Hayden Hurst should have a pretty solid performance. Pat Freiermuth, yet again, like I was saying, is a big target for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I like both of them in this spot, and I do prefer Freiermuth. Next up, we got the Kansas City Chiefs at the LA Chargers. Travis Kelce is a must-start tight end every single week. We don't even have to get into it. He's only had one down game this year, and it wasn't even like a game where he shit the bed and scored like 2 points. He still had a decent showing against the Chargers defense. That is bad. I like him. Gerald Everett is really up and down. He's a lot like Taysom Hill, except for you're not going to see Gerald Everett going out there running the ball or throwing the ball. It appears Keenan Allen and Mike Williams will be back, which you might think, oh, that might hurt the amount of targets Gerald Everett gets. Well, maybe it actually helps him because the offense is able to move the ball a little bit better, but he is banged up right now. That is something to follow. Final game here, Niners at the Arizona Cardinals on Monday Night Football. The last game was Sunday Night Football. George Kittle's a must start every single week to get out the gate of the season. He was banged up. Then he put up a bunch of shit performances. As of recently, he's played a lot better. Zach Ertz is done for the season, sadly. Dallas Goedert and Zach Ertz both out for the count here. Zach Ertz is out for the season. Goddard should be able to come back based upon what I've read. Trey McBride is a tight end that they just drafted in the 2022 NFL draft. So I think McBride will be involved. The issue is Kyler might not play, so his upside will be severely hindered if Colt McCoy is under center. So thank you guys all so much for watching. If you did end up enjoying today's video, please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below as well as hitting that like button. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFNTSY. I hope you guys all have a great rest of your guys' day. And as always, goodbye.